Out of all the possible genre offshoots in video games, tactical or strategy RPGs have to be my favorite. I was a hater for a long time, not even wanting to touch one until I played Fire Emblem Three Houses in 2019. After 600 and something hours and about a million different playthroughs, I have become quite the connoisseur of tactic RPGs. So with that being said, here are 5 of them that I feel like are kind of underrated, but not necessarily the best games ever made. The first game on the list is Brigadine Legend of Forsenna from 1998 on the PlayStation 1. This was developed by Hardy Robin, a short-lived Japanese company who developed the Wonder Swans 2001 Atelier Marie and Ellie. It's been published by Atlas, so the modern price has shot up to around 140 USD or $70 loose. There's a 2000 Grand Edition on PlayStation 1. It's been released in Japan only, and that has a multiplayer mode, voice acting, cutscenes, new monster classes, and more. I'm not super sure if there's a fan translation of this, but that would probably be the best way to go if you could emulate it. This is one of those games that has no in-game tutorial, so your manual explains everything from who the characters of each country are, how to navigate the map, monster classes, statuses, etc. The game really doesn't hold your hand, and the difficulty at the start is high, while toward the end of a playthrough, battles become very easy as your group has leveled up a ton. Salamanders, and witches especially, can become god tier. I'm gonna get more to gameplay in a second. You have the choice of 6 characters, so each of them belong to different parts of a soon-to-be warring continent. Their point of views are very unique, but even with long dialogue threads, the plot isn't as interesting as, let's say, Three Houses. So that's something that you have to expect. There's going to be very little investment plot-wise, so that is kind of a killer for me, to be honest with you. I actually only played one protagonist, and that took me about 10 or so hours, and then I kind of gave up. This is one of those games I didn't finish, but completing this game would take closer to 50, if not a little bit more. And that's saying every character. While the look of the 2D map is just passable, the character design and watercolor rendering are really nice. Actually, one of the JoJo anime artists, Yukitoshi Hotani, did a lot of the portraits and a lot of the still art. The monarchs look especially beautiful and individual in expressions, wearing unique clothing to their nation, etc. Even one-off soldiers look really great. During battles, you'll see this shift into 2D pixel art with dragons, pixies, scorpions, golems, and more. They work well and play individual enough that you'll be able to figure out or remember what unit does what pretty quickly. Moving and placing your units is in a hexagonal pattern like a beehive, allowing you to only move a certain amount of steps with your team. That all flows fine, but the transition to 1 versus 1 3D models is a bit rough. Thankfully, you can turn it off because it kills time, nearly 30 seconds each. So to start battles and to win the whole continent, you group up leaders and monsters, then you have to move to a castle adjacent to one enemy at a time. Besides just combat, you can send troops on quests for weapons, items, or even new help. As time passes, other enemies can conquer territories, so you gotta keep at a good pace. Only 3 commanders and a team can be on each side, and a 12-turn limit does exist. If monsters die, it's permanent, but if commanders die, they just tap out. You can also conquer their leftover monsters, which you will want to do. Whether an attack will hit or miss is not something the game tells you about. Even very weak opponents take lots of hits, so you want your team to surround the enemies one-on-one. Knights only have a certain amount of mana points to use for monster special attacks, and you gotta keep in mind that big enemies cannot hit small ones. Flying ones aren't even as effective on other small enemies either. They try to do this to balance out what enemies can really deal damage to who. I do want to compliment the monthly time system because each month you get money that you can use to buy new monsters, and some monsters can level up their class, like a ghoul turning into a vampire. To check your power, their rune skills cost more, so you can't do any spam attacks. In all honesty, Brigadine Forsenna is not a game I feel super passionate about. It's slow, clunky, and a little dull for me, but those who like full-on strategy with no fluff may find this up their alley. Emulated, if anything. I paid full price for it, so like around $100, but I kind of don't regret it because it was a very good friend who owns this shop that I bought it from, but still, kind of a lot of money, so just emulate it. And the next game on the list is actually a sequel, which is significantly more beginner-friendly. Brigadine Legend of Runercia released in 2020 on PS4 and the Switch. The PC version came out in 2022, and most people are going to say that's the best way to play it. It was developed by Matrix Software, who mostly assist on titles like Alundra, Military Madness, Dragon Quest, and more. It was published by HappyNet, who contributed to many 2000s anime like Rosario Vampire, Full Metal Panic, and more. The only other game they've published is the Japanese Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles Shredder's Revenge. If any of you remember the Sega CD titled Dark Wizard, the scenario writer also wrote this sequel to the PS1 game. Thankfully, Runercia has a thorough tutorial, and it's accessible right as you press play. It'll ease the confusion of clicking around like I did on the PS1, plus the UI overall is much more simplistic. But there are still about 1,000,001 things to do in said menus. Runercia is very much the same as its predecessor, still with a choice of 6 warring factions where Rune Knights control unicorns, dragons, the works. Unfortunately, just like last time, the dialogue and writing is told in flat chunks, becoming predictable as soon as it starts. Visually, the new portrait style is nice, some of the outfits especially are genuinely works of art. The lead artistic voice was Rayada Kazuma, who also worked on Xeno Chronicles. And in the overworld map, the textures and colors in 2D look much smoother, but they do lack that charm and area design overall. I always just have to wonder in games like this, where are the cool traps and ambushes like in Fire Emblem or something? Like, why do the terrain situation just not do anything? So again, almost everything about this is like the PS1 game, but I noticed that there were much more interesting moves available to your unit right away. Some attacks can reach multiple slots forward, and some were much more square, so how you positioned your group could really punish commanders. Plus, they now tell you how likely a hit is to occur, which is a nice change. When it comes to difficulty, you can go from easy to hard, but more interestingly, an update called Titans and the Iron Front unlocks a custom difficulty. So you can set a base difficulty on top of time limits, XP amounts, if you can catch monsters, and more. I think that adds a lot to replayability. In order to get through all of the story, gather extra characters through quests, and just play without killing all your monsters, this will last around 100 hours. Physically, in all regions, both the PS4 and Switch copies sit around 50 to 80 USD, and the Collector PAL version has a nice artbook and CD, but I don't really think people care much for those anymore. I miss promo tees. Being honest again, I didn't complete this one. I felt uninterested after 12 hours. Strategy games are either getting all my time or very little. And I think that really comes down to the repetition of them. Like, do I really want to sit and just play the same battle? In some cases, like Fire Emblem Sacred Stones, absolutely. I'll sit there for like 6 tries of the same map and be totally at peace. But then I'll play something like this and just not find the magic in it. So you've got to play around, and that's why I usually think like emulating is better for this genre of games if you're just not sure about it yet, because it's very individual. Diofield Chronicle is the third on the list. It released in 2022 on the Switch, PS4, 5, Xbox, and Series, as well as the PC. It was published by Square Enix and developed by Landcars, who have also co-developed El Shaddai, Shin Megami Tensei Strange Journey, Lost Dimension, and a bunch more. It was actually part of that AA over AAA movement Square did with Valkyrie Elysium, Harvestella, Stranger of Paradise, and more. That era of their games paid off better than Final Fantasy VII Rebirth financially, so it's likely we'll keep seeing more of that, which I'm okay with. As soon as I saw Diofield on a wall at GameStop when it came out, I was actually pretty intrigued. It dropped to $20 on Black Friday, and I got it on PlayStation 5. I expected the presentation to be mid, knowing the budget, but it's really in no way bad. Cutscenes are oddly stilted with a lack of intriguing camera work, but the models look clean and nicely designed.
Said to be a connoisseur of foreign culture. This he would have had specially imported, I'm sure.
Well.
While I like the accents and how the dialogue is written in an accurate way to the time period, the actors are very mid. Thankfully, most of the story is kept short, or in written text only. Speaking of story, it's not much, but I appreciate them starting in media res and then not over-explaining who we are, where we are, or how. This is also one of the games where hidden lore is just sprinkled throughout the library, so you can access it at any time if you really want to get into the nitty-gritty of the plot. The game doesn't do much time wasting. It's like a 25-hour experience, maybe even less. The gameplay feels very similar in its pacing. It plays out in real time with a over-the-head view and a very adjustable camera. You can go anywhere on these maps if you move a little string to tell your people where to go. It's like the Donnie Darko Worm of Fate, but less cool. The game pauses as you select moves to do, and you can pull off pincer attacks or ambushes if you set your soldiers up well. Plus, you can even sneak past enemies since you can see where their view is at, or you can hit them from far away with arrows and such. Once you get access to a base, you can buy items, new weapons, and other quests become available too. I also have to shout out the stage design. They don't look similar in layout, just bluish tones typically. Sometimes you can get to enemies in 3 to 4 ways, or a pulled bridge needs to get figured out before you can cross. Plus, to add even more intrigue, you have optional achievements if you finish in a certain time. It's also fun to find treasure chests. They can have some pretty good stuff in them, like new weapons or just a ton of money. I have a lot of positives here, but I'm not jumping out of my seat. It's still just another strategy game. I don't think it will do enough out of the gate to ever get a sequel, but because it's so cheap secondhand, it's very worth a shot. Fourth on the list is Triangle Strategy, released in 2022, again in that lower budget tier of Square Enix games. Art Dink developed it. They make wildly experimental stuff like Kowloon's Gate, Aquanaut, and No One Can Stop Mr. Domino that I played constantly in college after buying a PS1 LCD screen. Most recently, Art Dink developed the Xbox version of Soul Hackers. Interestingly, there's actually a MetaQuest 2, 3, and Pro 2024 release, which is kind of odd. Adding to Triangle's overall charm is equated to the development head Tomoya Asano, the producer of Octopath Traveler and Bravely Default. The 2D 3D mix and European setting feel very Octopath coded. I have very fond memories playing this game during my senior year of college, especially on a coach bus with a homie Kristen, who's also a great illustrator. I'll link her below. She was also playing it at the time, and we were on a trip to Hamilton Woodtype in Wisconsin. My cousin and I shared a room and played Smash and ate tacos and made awesome art prints. You're looking at one of them now. Anyhow, I played it for 20 hours and never finished the last 10 or so hours until now. Triangle Strategy is really good for what it is. The presentation is that phenomenal 2D 3D vibe like Octopath, and it's got a super engaging story. However, the voice acting is some of the worst I have ever heard.
Speaking of his subjects, it appears lordship of House Wolfort will be passed down to young Serenoa.
The direction is just off. They all seem to be talking as if they're in different projects. This is likely because it was recorded during the COVID era at home setups. I also feel that the narrative sometimes takes too long and keeps you waiting between battles for awkwardly long stretches. If you want to see the perfect balance of downtime and action, Fire Emblem Three Houses does this the best. Absolutely. Something else to comment on is the plot choices you can make, leading to 4 possible endings. Instead of being able to save scum, the choices happen pretty early on, so you're locked into at least 10 hours or more of gameplay that only really changes in the final 2 chapters. Again, Fire Emblem did a better job of truly changing your experiences depending on what house you choose right from the start. As for the combat, you're placed on tiles in gorgeous multi-layered maps. There are tons of weapons and classes leading to different hit ranges, abilities, and overall movement. Hits from behind guarantee critical hits, so you always want to press enemies while also guarding your rear. Normal versus hard mode are both well balanced, but because the maps can be so narrow, it's really tough to not get hit badly, making it pretty hard every now and then. Luckily, there's no permadeath. This game is very fun and interesting for its budget, and for $30, I'd say it's worth every penny. Square has still not greenlit a sequel, but out of that mid-budget drop they were so keen on, Triangle Strategy did pretty well. Number 5, the 100-line Last Defense Academy was released just this year by Aniplex and 2Q, from the directors and writers of Danganronpa and Zero Escape respectively. It was released on Switch and PC. I just sold my standard edition for special because I loved it that much. It's a perfect blend of Danganronpa, Ender's Game, 13 Sentinels, and 3 Houses. If you want a spoiler-free but more thorough review, watch my video. One of the best surprises of 2025 was absolutely 100 Line. Musically and artistically, 100 Line is peak imagination, taking you so far in a sci-fi direction before rerouting you to a surreal slasher, to then a 90s anime romance, and finishing it out with rather tough emotional moments, complemented by great English voice acting, awesome portraits, and smooth animation. 100 Line will never bore you, even if 80% of it is visual novel storytelling, because it knows when to let you loose to increase skills, chat, explore, or play a board game to get items which you use to make weapons and traps. Battle-wise, you have a ton of unique characters. Some move in cars, on a bike, or mechs, while others do randomized Gatling gun or axe damage. Because of the sheer amount of enemies, battles can be challenging since you need to defend the school before its health drops to 0. Both you and the enemies are fragile, with sometimes just 1 to 2 hits ending it. There are no permadeaths, and you're actually encouraged to die to be able to use a final screen wiping attack, which also allows other allies to use 1 to 2 special attacks as well. Bosses are like puzzles that know when to call it quits. For example, an enemy that goes through an underground tunnel to hit each set of 4 teams per round. When the boss is away, you defend. When it shows up, stop everything to attack it all out. I also like that once a boss is gone, you just win, instead of having to ever kill all enemies and risking a dumb loss. My last comment before I go is about the alleged 100 endings. Yes, you heard me right. The first ending is on a set path, which takes about 35 hours. And if you're like me, skeptical about whether it's worth it or not, know that only 6 or so of the endings are truly story progressive. Some characters who only had maybe 3 or so hours of time become main players, while others get booted out, and this entirely changes the plot for the better. However, most bosses and fights will be the same, so some tedium ensues, but luckily you keep getting stronger attacks to move battles faster. I also recently heard that because the game sold pretty well and is doing better than expected, they're adding some updates to erase some of the tedium by allowing you to skip battles you've already played. I'm a pretty picky gamer when it comes to listing favorites, especially since I play so many types of games, but 100 Line definitely makes the top 10, maybe even the top 5. 50 hours of gameplay in 1 week, it's certainly my favorite on this list today. So try the long demo if anything. Tell me about some of your favorite underrated strategy games, or tell me about the ones that everyone knows about. Thanks for watching.